It's 7 o'clock. Do we have a quorum?
Present.
Trustee Barnett. Trustee Gluck.
Present.
Cone. Okay, so we'll just,
Sure.
I'll continue with my introductions and give everybody time to join. So obviously, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll discuss additional cuts this evening to the budget, and during the meeting, your microphones will be muted. We will turn the microphone on if you wish to speak. Be assured that we will take the time this evening to hear all of your comments, and let's try and limit the comments so that we can get everybody in there, and you'll be addressed on a first come, first served basis. If we experience technical difficulty, please be patient and we'll do our best to mitigate the situation. So far, we have had very limited issues, other than I can't turn my video on right now, but I'll get to that. As I've done every meeting now, and I'm proud to do, since we started the sequestration under COVID-19, I'd like to thank a bunch of people, starting with the residents. Their cooperation has been fantastic. We've been following the guidelines to prevent the transfer of coronavirus. We've had our cases. We've had about 7 or 8 cases in the park, but there is zero evidence of contact tracing, in the sense that other people have gotten it from somebody in Tuxedo Park. So that's terrific. Now, you know, the Harriman State Park closed Monday. It makes me realize how lucky we are. And I tie this directly into social distancing and the fact that we've been able to keep this virus under control. I promise I won't close our roads for recreation, or bridle paths for recreation, or lakes for recreation. And that makes us very unique. I want to thank the village employees again. They have been unbelievable, coming in every day to work and giving us a sense of normalcy in our daily lives by functions continuing to move forward. That includes Debbie, Denise, John, Jeff, and the chief. These guys are on the front lines, and it means a lot. I'd like to thank fire, EMS, the healthcare workers throughout Orange County, at the hospitals. The risk they take on a day-to-day basis is tremendous, and we couldn't do it without them. All right, so let's enjoy ourselves and have a good meeting. Without objection, Debbie is going to be scripting the changes to the budget as we move forward. And if we decide to make this a final budget tonight, we'll be inserting those changes into the budget so that we can pass it as a final budget. So if you can put up, John, the document.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Did I do it? Yeah. Okay, great. So it only looks like, by the way, we don't have very many people this evening. That could be due to good weather. So why don't we start, trustees, without objection, and go through item by item? Is that acceptable to you? I guess there's no objection.
Sure.
So item 1 is salary expense, police department personnel matter. That's sort of a solid given. We're going to do that, and we would have to go into executive session to discuss that because it pertains to a particular person, but rest assured we're going to go with that. Then we have the roads.
Wait a minute. Why don't we just agree that is a point of discussion in executive session? I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but it's certainly topical. But if it needs to be an executive session, it's not a foregone conclusion.
Okay. Thank you. So
And also-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maureen.
Sorry. Do you want us to raise our hands electronically? Is that the best way of doing it, by the way?
Well, for our discussion now,
Yeah.
we'll just be considerate to the person that's speaking, wait till they're finished, and then continue. I don't think we need to worry about the mics or raising hands.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to everybody?
That's acceptable to me. So on the
Perfect.
salary expense, it's not related, not that we're going to discuss it because it is an executive session matter, but it is not related to, just to be clear, just one person.
I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Oh, in item where there's $5,000, that item?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right, appreciate the clarification. All right, so the next two items involve paving. And one choice is to pave only the main roads this fiscal year, with the exception of Clubhouse Road and Village Office driveway and parking lot. And that would be a give back of $94,000. And I'd like to get people's opinion on that, the trustee's opinion. Road choice 2 is no repaving except pothole repair. That's a much bigger return, but my view is I don't think that that's going to be successful with the public based on last week's conversation. Any trustee like to comment on that? All right, so is that an accepted reduction of 94?
Sorry, I'm not really sure if what you're wanting with this. You've got 6 or 7 items here. Are you just going to read them off and articulate them, or do you want us to give input line by line, which is fine too? Just
okay. Yeah, no, good question. Good question. I sent this up, well, just a little history. Last week, the trustees felt, I think led by you, Ellen, that you didn't have enough time to review these the way you'd like to and comment. So we passed it off till this next meeting. So yes, these are the proposed changes that I'm suggesting. And it's a revised list from last week. And yes, I'd like to have discussion in between each item and then come to a conclusion on how much we're willing to reduce the budget on each of these items, if that's acceptable to everybody. So why don't we go back to 511040A, which is the reduction of road paving, and compare that to 511040A to no new paving and just pothole repair. The difference is about $100,000, slightly less than 100,000. So yeah, let's go around the horn, starting with, I can call this out. Paul, we'll start with you and see what you think.
Sure. Well, I guess I start with a question. I think, well, I think the question the question I would start with, I think, is what does this do to our program of road repaving going forward? Or is the intention here that we would move everything back a year, or that this would somehow the requirement or the need for road paving that we've been doing historically isn't really necessary, so we don't need to do that anymore? Or is this just a notion that we'll take something this year and move it into next year, where somehow we might think, what would make us think that we would be in a better position to fund that next year rather than this year?
All right, well, I guess the answer to the first answer is that because we need to reduce property tax this year. So yeah, it would be delaying it till next year, other than potholes.
So I think we need to reduce property taxes every year, which
That's
is
correct.
which is what I think we try and do.
Absolutely.
Pushing.
And I don't feel, I mean, I heard a lot of comments last week about if we delay some of the road paving this year, that it will be much more expensive next year. I don't agree with that. This came from the audience. And so I don't buy into that, but that's just me. And yes, it's a big number, which would allow us to save money and go down to last year's tax rate.
I would submit that it doesn't save money. It transfers expense from one year to another. because the, road paving one way or another does go on. So if we remember what we did in our April 1 budget, which was the preliminary budget that was passed unanimously and went out to the public, we took a chunk out of road paving, which was the amount that collectively I thought we all agreed could be pushed off a bit. Pushing off, what is this, about a 25% of the road paving budget?
Well, you got 400.
Excuse me, let me finish, please. To a future period, unless there's some reason why that expense is going away, or some reason we think that things won't be, we won't have a need to reduce taxes as much next year as we do this year, is something that doesn't strike me as a prudent course of action. So that would be my view on that one.
I appreciate it. I do agree with you that, we did agree on a number in a prior budget, but as you know, these budgets change as long as they're preliminary and drafts until the final budget. So, we can certainly take different views on different reductions as time passes. That's part of the process. And yes, I agree. This is putting it off for 1 year. And I don't know what's going to happen next year, but I support it 100%, which would be choice one. And I'm hearing from you some issues. I don't know how you might vote, but you've expressed some issues that are logical and make sense, and part of a good discussion. Trustee McHugh, do you have any comments?
Sorry, I guess I echo Paul's comments. Just for clarity, it was the April 8th budget that we unanimously agreed to, where we reduced it from 200,200 to 190,200. I guess that's point number one. Point number two is we spent an inordinate amount of time developing a capital plan for a reason. And, what this village historically has always done is we do Band-Aids, then when a problem forces us to address it, we deal with it rather than prudently planning and managing it. I think that's issue number one as far as I'm concerned. So I'm certainly not in favor of that. I am okay with the 190,200, which we had in April 9th budget. I think the other thing that people just don't comprehend is the amount of money it costs to manage our infrastructure with regard to roads. Basically, we're talking 25 to 30 miles of roads, average lifespan of 10 years on a road. So that's what we're doing. This fiscal year, we've spent $400,000 once we complete the Clubhouse Road repaving project. That has been what we have spent this year with regard to roads. And I think a lot of people would scratch their head and go, that didn't seem to go a particularly long way. And unfortunately, I wouldn't disagree with that. But the fact of the matter is that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that in terms of the capital budget, we do have a capital budget that we've been working on, and it's not finalized. And there's a multitude of projects in there that are going to have to be monitored over the next 10 years, for example. And again, there was a number agreed on in a prior budget, but this process encourages changes to those budgets because you get people involved, the public makes comments, the public sends in emails and letters. And so our hands aren't tied between budget to budget.
I appreciate that and accept it, but I don't think people understand that the bridge between pond number 3 and Weewa in all likelihood will be closed because the bridge is, questionable whether or not we put signage that no trucks can go over it. But the question is, are no vehicles? I mean, these are big ticket items, and delaying something doesn't solve it. It just makes somebody else inherit a problem, and that's my concern, really, more than anything else.
Appreciate it. The bridge repair is not in this budget.
That is correct. and
Right.
On the capital list.
Right. So we're not really, that's an issue to discuss, I think, in the future when we're deciding where to put our capital. Right now, though, based on the engineer's report, which I read, I think it makes sense just to close it for all traffic and use it as a pedestrian bridge until we arrange for the capital to go ahead with that project. I agree with you. I think it's a very important project and one of the first things we should tackle. Let's see. Maureen?
So I originally put, when we were looking for ideas to cut expenses, I originally put this on the list that we would reduce our paving and potholes, our road maintenance. I've had an opportunity to walk around the park a lot lately, drive around the park a lot lately, and in other areas. And I am really uncomfortable reducing our paving and road budget to 1/4 of our last year's spend. And on average, we spend over $250,000 a year on fixing our roads. So, and again, I've mentioned before, like one of the ways you tell it, you get an impression of a community, what it cares about, its financial stability, etc., is when you drive around roads and you see how the roads are maintained. And so whether it's a side road or a main road, so that's A and B. And then C is, I don't think it's prudent, fiscally, fiduciary-wise, or otherwise prudent to defer sort of a business as usual expense to the costs associated with that to the subsequent years. I just think it causes taxpayer discontent in those years, as well as we did put that project list together, but we really haven't moved on any items. There's a couple items we have, but there's a lot of items we have to move on. And again, we're just continuously deferring. And I don't believe that's wise.
Right, but I think the capital list is separate and, we're not, by making any of the cuts that are proposed here, wouldn't affect those capital projects that we discussed, for example, the bridge. Now, in terms of, we're sort of repeating ourselves. Last week, you made the point that it's not a great image for prospective buyers to have roads that aren't repaired. Now, the fact, though, is that we've had, under this same road condition, multiple sales in just the last 6 months. I'm not so sure that is a huge issue. Our Village Hall parking lot and driveway has been a mess for years, and prospective buyers go in and out of there for business. So, you and I just simply disagree on that point, but I hear you. Trustee Barnett, are you, or Maureen, did you want to add something?
Yeah.
So I want to say that the condition today is not what we're going to see in the next year, right? Because we're talking over a year, from fiscal year to fiscal year. So we're going to have to live with this for a year. So the conditions of the roads will deteriorate. So what we see today is going to get worse.
What about potholes?
Meaning, what about they're going to?
Well, no, in remaining in this budget is potholes for all of the other roads to be filled.
Well, yes, except for some of the roads, as I understand it, that are not main roads, no longer can you correct the potholes. The roads have to be repaved, is what I was understood from members of the board, as well as discussed with Jeff Foss.
Okay, how about Trustee Barnett?
I certainly am in sympathy with what's being said about the need to focus on the infrastructure. We could spend 3 times this amount of money and still just make a small dent in our infrastructure needs. I think to a certain extent, but I also appreciate the fact that we need to find some tax savings. And this is, in my view, kind of largely symbolic, because whether we go for option 1 or option 2, we're going to leave a lot of items that we would all like to address unaddressed. So I'm inclined to go to option one, but I'm also maybe suggest to split the middle. Let's say take the 125. So if that'd be a compromise. Allow us to do a little bit more, but recognize that we are deferring things that we shouldn't defer.
I think that's very I'm sorry, go, please.
That's the problem we have right now. We're having to make difficult choices and no good answers.
I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I do think a compromise would be in order.
Mac,
Yes, sir.
John Cassis. Most of the people who use the road go to the school and they don't pay any taxes, as I understand it. And they don't pay anything toward the maintenance of the roads. And the second most people go to the club from outside the park, and they don't pay anything for the roads. So your two biggest users, school traffic and club traffic, contribute nothing. Why can't we request and then insist that they carry their share?
I think that's interesting and worth discussing. You know, the club's view is that they are one of the highest property tax contributors, and they sort of shy away whenever we're talking about additional fees. But your point's well taken in terms of the school as well. The school only pays for maintenance on snow removal, I think, just in their parking lot and so on and so forth. I guess let's just throw an idea out there. Let's say that we increase the purchase price of the tags on the cars. We had shown some examples before, and I don't know if it would have a significant impact, John, because we can only raise the fees so far, but I do love the idea of having them contribute. On the other hand, to balance that out, we have a lot of weekend people now. I don't know if it's 50%, but it's a lot. And they're only here on weekends. So that's a bonus for us in terms of using the roads, something we should consider.
Mac?
Yes, sir. Hold on one sec.
I live on
Okay, I'm sorry to cut everyone off. Let me just get through this first item with the trustees on paving, and then we can open it up. Now, John, you're on, right? John Kozlar?
I'm talking about paving.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to, I only see a few people on. That's why I'm bringing it. Okay, so let's go around the horn with the trustees. And why don't you, again, I fully support the 94, but I think a compromise is something that should be put on the table, as Trustee Barnett said. Would we like to go around the horn and get to an agreement on what to do? I'll start with Trustee McHugh.
My view is I'm staying on the May 8th budget.
And what would that number be for the people that are listening?
190,200, which is where we had unanimous agreement.
Not 9,200.
No, 190,200.
For what, Alan? The roads?
Yes.
So what's the differential in that we would take off that?
There's no differential. I'm saying I want the budget which was presented on April 8th with regard to roads.
And what was that number, Alan?
190,200.
Okay. Again, just to reemphasize, we've all agreed on budgets as we've gone through each stage, but the purpose of this exercise is to modify those things, go back to things, and you certainly are entitled to go back to a number, but I don't think there should be any stigma attached for people presenting a different number. That's just, I'd like to just say that. Okay, let's go to Trustee Gluck.
Sure. So I don't think there's a stigma associated. I would put it this way. I think we went through a long process looking for lots of different ways to reduce expenses, including road expenses, that led to that April 8th budget. And for that item and others, at least in my mind, that represented our best effort, my best effort, at coming to a number in this category and other categories that brought us to a place where you had a budgeted expense on the basis of prudent management. Could you take 5,000 off of that? Could you take 10,000 off of that? Maybe. These are sort of rounding errors, but taking chopping an appreciable amount off of that this year just to load it on next year doesn't seem to me to be prudent or to make to make sense. So unless there's a reason for doing that, unless we're seeing a reduction in expenses, unless we're saying we want to commit to reduce our road expense from going here forward, I would tend to stick with the budget number that we came to previously. I'm not seeing a good, prudent, management-wise reason to reduce that further.
Thank you. Trustee Cohen. Trustee Barnett.
I'm repeating myself. I think that the difference between going to 192,000, which is the budget, there's so much more that we need to do. That number could easily be probably 400,000, 500,000, and still not be enough. Because there's infrastructure maintenance is the big problem that we have. So I think that spending a little bit less, spending less this year because of the emergency, with the knowledge that we're in essence borrowing Peter to pay Paul, is acceptable, and I would go for like 125. I'd split the difference a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Okay, so is Maureen available?
Yes, John actually muted me.
Yeah,
Sorry about
I
that.
apologize. That was my
This
fault.
special deal we made.
Yeah, I mean, like Paul said, you know what? Yes, I really do want to reduce taxes, and I was hopeful that this line item would be our avenue for reducing taxes. But I agree. Maybe we could reduce it $10,000. But I think going below that number is dangerous for us, for expenses. Pushing expenses into the next fiscal year, because we all understand, Mac, and you agree, right? We're just pushing these expenses to next year.
No, I mean, I agree that what we don't do this year, we will do next year. But it's not like we're borrowing from next year to lower it this year. We're just not going to do, my strategy is we're just not going to do that project. We're going to delay it 1 year. So next year we'll be facing the same question. Do we want to take anything out of the $400,000 budget or not? But I don't see it doubling or even going up 5% in cost. But all right, so I appreciate the comment. Yeah, please.
It's only a $200,000. It was a $200,000 budget. We brought it down to 190. So it's not, this year, for other reasons, we spent $400,000. But in the budget, the line item is only $190,000, and it was 200. We did bring it back after a lot of discussion. So just FYI. And we'll be doing different roads. It'll be doing the roads we have to do this year and then additional roads next year. So it's definitely going to increase our costs. Unfortunately, I wish it was the case.
Oh, but didn't you budget this to do all roads or a certain amount of roads? How many extra, the money that you've allocated for road repaving, how many miles of road is that you've calculated you would be able to accomplish?
Alan, you're the.
Okay, sorry, I got muted again.
John, can you, John?
Yes.
Can you put Maureen up on this screen so we can see her as well?
When I speak, it'll come up. It should come up.
Yeah, you should be able to speak now. If you switch to gallery view, you should be able to see everyone in the meeting.
We don't see her.
I don't know.
All right, so it sounds like in terms of the 94, there is no interest. The majority of the trustees believe that they do not want to do the 94. So moving off that, is there a compromise we could reach from the 94 in terms of a smaller number? Yes, Maureen.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think that we could go 5, 10, 10, 5, 10, up to $15,000. But again, there's going to be a cost associated with that because we're going to have to push it to the following year. But yeah, if we want to tinker around the edges, which again is tinkering around the edges, you can change that.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that. So the what's on the table now, Trustee Gluck, Barnett, and McHugh, is taking somewhere between 10 and 15,000 off. So that not taking 94, but taking 15. That's what I believe is on the table. Can we have a little show of hands who would be willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so I would be willing to do that too. So shall we go 15?
Well, why don't we make it easy and we take it from the original budget, which was presented by the DPW at 200, 200, and just make it 175 to make it easy. Is that amenable to everybody?
Whatever way you want to cut it, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's basically an additional, we've just found 15K that people are willing to sacrifice with regard to roads. So
Well,
15.
I don't think the people have had that input. I think that this is what we're willing to do.
Which we think is prudent, right?
Right. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on to buildings and equipment. Looking for a $5,000 give back. There are no known specific building repair projects at this time. Why don't we start with Trustee Gluck?
Yeah, so I think we know that the keep roof has a leak that needs fixing. And I'm not sure what the expense of that is. Do you have
Well,
any information
just
on
a
that?
comment, there is money from the private donation from one of our residents.
No, Dave.
Okay, let me finish, please. There is a donation, and that was primarily donated for the keep, and there is money left over in that, so it would not be affecting our taxes. So it's not like we need to put money for that project into the regular budget. That's my point. Paul, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. In my mind, I thought if the booth project moves forward, the booth project would be absorbing the funding that was left in that account.
Yes, but right now the booth is, yeah, that, of course, absolutely.
Right.
But it's also available for other things. But at this point in time, the booth is dead because you guys didn't pass the last budget. So as it stands now, the booth project is not moving forward.
Sorry, I wouldn't say the booth is dead because the last budget wasn't passed. I think we can. I think there's other issues, unfortunately. But you know, if you're saying that that's not going to be, and David, I wouldn't give up on the booth budget.
Well,
right?
if I could just interject 1 minute, there's only 2 things left to vote on before we approve the booth. One of them are 2 agreements, S&B and Jody Zero for the welding. And the other, so there's that and the budget. So the budget was not approved. So I can't move forward with the project because I could get the contracts approved, but there still would be a budget that's not, which means we can't get to the end of the obstacles that were put into this. So in fact, it is dead unless somebody wants to revive it.
Okay, so you want to use the money that has been out, we've been thinking.
No, you guys got it wrong, all of you. The budget is, we have a line item 1622020A, buildings, equipment. We have funding in there. What David has brought up is that we spent $10,000 this year. We had budgeted $30,000 for the fiscal year 2019-20, and we reduced it $10,000 for the next year. And what David's suggesting is we reduce it by a further $5,000.
Correct.
So there's got nothing to do with the the land sale of Brook Road and the Bruno donation and the insurance and everything. It's got absolutely nothing to do with that. It's got to do with a specific line item which is in our budget. So
Right. I was just responding to Paul's
No,
trustee
I understand
question.
that, but
Yeah, I don't know if he was speaking that. All right. So let's see. Did we go to Trustee Barnett yet?
So David, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I had actually finished. I was just responding to, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry. So I was sort of starting out by responding to the notion that there was, no known building repairs that needed to be made, and that was one that I knew of. My recollection of this particular item is that the amount, we have buildings and we have repair, and these buildings, we have the Keep, we have the Lodge, we have DPW, we have the sewer plant, and we have the village office. And every year in one or more of these buildings, sometimes more than 1 year, sometimes less than another year, things happen and the buildings need repair. So when you go back and look at the past year's expenses on these buildings, now it's a little dangerous because I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I recall that when we went through them, there were years where the expenses were significantly more than 10, but there weren't a lot of years where the expenses were significantly less than 10. And so that was sort of the source of that $10,000 number. Reducing it further without revisiting those numbers and getting a better understanding of why we think we're reducing them further and why we think in the forthcoming year there'll be less need for funds in that area is is something we should do first. So why do we think that next year, in the forthcoming year, our expenses will be lower than in the prior years?
First of all, all of these decisions are based on some sort of risk. If we weren't willing to take risks, there wouldn't be any proposals to lower any of these numbers. So right off the bat, these are taking a risk. Now, this item has been on the budget for, I don't know, a couple weeks. And, if you had wanted to go and check this out, I understand we can either, you can do that, or we can post and not come to a final budget tonight and call another meeting if you want to take the time now to review that. Paul,
Can I ask a question?
please.
So just so we're all on the same page, because I think it started out a little confusing. We are looking to reduce the building maintenance number from what to what? What are you suggesting?
What I'm suggesting, which we are on 162020A, buildings equipment. And there was a number that is on the budget you may have in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, since there are no planned projects at this time, to lower it. And again, that's a risk. but that's the impetus behind doing it.
All right. Do you mind if I give you some granularity with regard to the numbers, just so we're all clear? It
I have no
was
problem with that.
budgeted 2019, 2020, we had a $30,000 number. Year to date, we spent just shy of 10,000. We have repairs that John Ledwith, I believe, is presenting at the April Board of Trustee meetings with regard to repairs at the keep because there's a leak on the lower roof. My guess is order of magnitude, that's 5 to 10,000, but I honestly don't know, and that's a big variance, but let's just do that. And what we had in the proposed budget, the April 8th budget was $20,000. So I think what David's proposing is taking it from $20,000 to $15,000 is, I believe, what
Correct.
the discussion is,
Yes,
right?
and that's the case along, yes, that's right. Again, I know you mentioned the keep, and we haven't had prices come in yet, but it doesn't have to come out of this line. But we can discuss that later. Okay, so
And one piece of information too, Alan, if you go back to your point, I mean, to just your point about getting full information, and to Paul's point as well. If you go back to 2018-19, we budgeted $25,000 and we actually spent $52,000. So it was well over, I think that was actually Paul's point, well over.
Correct. And that's the problem with this is
Right.
we budget something and then the numbers are, when we actually have to do the repair, the numbers are order of magnitude different from these. That case in point is that $52,529 was to do the South Gatehouse.
yeah, I mean, the roof was about 50, right?
Correct. So,
Right.
you know, what do we got this year that potentially, and you know, this is a question mark this upcoming fiscal year, we've got the lodge roof, the sewer plant roof, and village office. Those are the two unknowns. With regard to the water plant roof, it's 20 years old, but that comes out of the water budget. With regard to the Pawtucket water tanks, we've gotten quotes from there. That's $25K, but that's coming from the water budget. So we're really talking about three different facilities where what's the unknown, and what we know is they're old roofs and there's problems, but do they have to be done next year, or is there a Band-Aid for a following year? Who knows? But the issue is at some point they'll have to be replaced. That's all we know. And
Yeah, I think that's very logical. The year that we went up to 50 something and after budgeting 30, if I'm accurate, that's an outlier to me because we had that one project. This year, what did we budget and where are we at now? Maureen, do you know?
Certainly. So we budgeted 30K. Year to date, we've spent just $9,998. And then we have the repairs. I think Tom Durciola came in at the lowest bidder. And, you know, I think order of magnitude is 5 to 10K, but I can't swear on that because I don't remember all the nuances of the bid, but it's that order of magnitude. So we're going to be between 50 and 30% under what we budgeted for this line item in this fiscal year.
Understood. Okay, so who hasn't had a chance to speak? Is that Trustee Barnett?
I'm just going to repeat what I said the first time. We're between a rock and a hard place on all these issues. The rock is that there are countless, very significant, very important infrastructure, road repairs that need to be done. And we can absorb a lot of money on doing them. That's the rock. The hard place is we're in the middle of a crisis of a century. This is going to be our generation's defining moment. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know what it's going to look like when it gets over. We don't know what normal is going to be. We don't know whether New York City is going to come back with its cultural and museums and operas and all the things that make it great. When will that come back? What impact will that have on us? That's the hard place. And I think that finding a number is just throwing a dart, because no matter what number you pick, it's not good. It's too much for the hard place and not enough for the rock. So
Yeah,
I'd find a compromise again. I'd go 2,500.
okay, thank you. So I just want to be clear for everyone in the audience that these infrastructure projects we're talking about and the budget we're discussing today are two separate items. We don't have any of these infrastructure projects listed in this budget at this point in time. But your point's well taken. So let's move on off this one. Trustee Barnett put out $2,500. I support the 5. How about everyone else?
Going twice.
Hey, do I have 25?
I'll support the 25 or 5, whatever you can get the consensus on.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
it's not,
no,
sorry,
sorry.
sorry, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, my issue is it's fine first if you take 5K out, and let's just play devil's advocate. We take 5 out, then all of a sudden we come in and we have to replace the roof. We have to fund it from someplace. So all we're doing is putting potentially an unrealistic number in and then taking it out of our unallocated surplus, which is perfectly within our purview to do it. But the question is, you know, is that the right thing to do? I'm happy not to be divisive to take 5K off, but I'm not sure it's necessarily the right thing. But as long as people understand what the implications of doing that is, that I'm fine with that.
Okay, Trustee Gluck.
Well, I think Alan stated it very well. I'm just not, I just find it hard to bring myself to a point of taking 5K off for the sake of taking 5K off. Or 2,500 off just for the sake of taking, 2,500 off.
I hear you. Actually, there's a logic to this, which is that I believe you said, Alan, we budgeted 30 and we're only at 9. So this is an area that has a vulnerability in terms of reducing a budget. So Alan, I'll get to you in a second. So
Yep.
Paul, it's not random and it's not just for the sake of doing it, if I understand what you're saying, but it's because we budgeted last year something and we only spent a small portion of it. And like I said, the year before when we did the roof, that was an outlier year. So that's the logic behind it in lowering it, not just for the sake of lowering it, because there's an opportunity to do it because we have a surplus.
Right.
That line item.
Or we're not spending at the rate that we thought we were last year, but that's fine. All right, I could go with that.
Yeah,
But just
can I just interject on one thing is how we came up with that 20 number is
yes.
we took, rightly so, an outlier, the 52, which was a high number, and then we took what this year's number year to date was, and then, you looked at the prior year, so you took the sum of those 3 data points, and then you came out with a blended average of, okay, it's a $20,000 spent. And to be honest, that's the methodology. So if you budget and don't spend it, it goes into the unallocated surplus. It doesn't stay in the building maintenance, but it goes into unallocated surplus. And then when we have a big ticket item to do it, we take it out of the unallocated surplus. What issue we've been all grappling with is creating a discipline and saying, we have a capital list, we need to start budgeting for these things so we recognize the fact that, it's going to cost us $250,000 to fix the road between pond number 3 and the Weewa. It's going to cost us $100,000 to do the bridge or the roof on the lodge. It's trying to get people to realize the consequences of our decisions and the cost of them. That's really what the gist is in my mind. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. We need to, when we distribute and finalize this capital budget, that needs to be put into the public eye, and we need to demonstrate to the public that we have a variety of projects that have to be done over time. And again, I see that separate from the budget, although I understand your point. You want people to understand what we're facing. I agree with that. We're talking about the budget now, though, in terms of going through each line item. So what's the consensus on buildings equipment?
I'm sorry, can I just make one point that Alan you didn't make again, but just so we're all on the same, we understand this. The budget number is 20,000, right? It's a proposed budget number right now, 1,000. This year we spent 10, and Alan said it's between 5 and 10. We're going to spend before this fiscal year ends. Correct, Alan?
That is correct.
So, by the way, we're in a low year and I agree, I'll compromise, but in a low, because it's only $5,000 really. In a low year, we're close to the 20,000 that is put in the proposed budget. So any kind of wrinkle, it's going to go into the unallocated surplus, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, again, it's probably not worth the time that we're spending on this. Because it's not something we can know for certain, right? Like you said, it's risk, but it is close to spending in 2000 this year.
This is a place marker more than anything else. Because what are we going to say? We're going to take that average lifespan of the DPW roof, the sewer plant roof, and the lodge roof, and then we're going to, do it that way, which would be a logical methodology, but then we'd be expensive at accruing a capital budget for it, so when we get it, we don't have a rude surprise, and that's obviously been the concept.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on with this one. Let me have a show of hands who are willing to take the 5, and we'll do that one first. I'd like to take the 5. Anyone else? Yes? Okay, we're going to take the 5. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next one. We've got street maintenance and equipment. That includes things like cones, signage, men at work type signage and other equipment. And the reason that I addressed this line item was because we have a surplus again. And therefore, it seems like if we spend a similar amount this year, we can lower that budget. And when you lower the budget, the department has to stay within that budget. It works that way. But so let's go around the room. I'm looking for $4,000, and we'll start with Trustee Gluck.
I have to pass on this one because I really don't have the background.
No problem. Trustee McHugh.
All right, I'm going to give some color in this one. I agree with the two things you said, that with regard to road signs and cones and breaks that Jeff gets in order to put the tar, but the big ticket item within this is road painting, and that's a line item of $6,500. It was not included in this line item this year, so to me this is kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we're kind of talking at cross purposes, because this $4,000 line item is really part of 511040A. So that's where the $6,500 went this fiscal year. That's how Debbie chose to allocate it. So, to me is, I prefer to say we took 25 out of the road paving budget and leave it at that, because effectively that's where that number is coming from, and we've already used, if you were consistent in our methodology and we asked Debbie to reverse her entries, this number wouldn't be under budget, it would be over budget by the tune of around $4,000 to $5,000. So I personally don't think it's really worth bothering on this one as a result of that.
Okay, let's see, Trustee Barnett.
I'm not sure I fully understand.
Okay, I'll go through it again. There's certain things included in this line item. For example, new cones, road cones, new signs, like men at work, this type of thing, and some others. And because we came in with a surplus this year, I thought it might be a good place to attack. Now, you know, I understand what you're saying, Alan, but we could also say to the DPW, you don't have more than this. This is your limit this year. So make sure you take good care of the stuff you got in stock right now, because you can't buy more than X number of thousands of dollars of this fiscal year. And that's just the way that, you know, we have to ask each department to sacrifice. And I think that this is one of those reasonable sacrifices. But
Right.
let's
So,
go ahead, please.
yeah, I philosophically, I don't have any problem with what you're saying, but let's call a spade a spade. So Jeff spent year to date $2,400 on signage and road. We've just spent another $700 on the signage we put at the south gate and 5 different ways to deal with the trespassing issue. So we imposed that on Jeff. And then as managing our road systems and having demarcations down the middle of the road so people can drive safely, that's part of this number, which is road painting. And that's it. So my problem is if we bundle this number with street maintenance, then this would be a non-issue. And I personally think we've done it. The concession of taking it from 200,200 to 175K is factoring it in that. And what you're saying is, you know, Jeff's literally over budget on this line item, but Debbie chose to do a journal entry where it hits street maintenance contractual rather than street maintenance equipment. So it's a definitional thing, and we can reverse the journal entry, then we're over budget, and then what do we say? So that's my hesitation with this one. It's $4,000, I know in the scheme of things, but I just wanted to make sure people are cognizant of what exactly it is historically versus what it has been this year.
Thank you. I think another way, an angle to look at this is, last year we did lines in the roads, divider lines, etc., and we still came in under budget.
Yeah, but
And the question would be, are we going to be doing the same amount of new painted lines this year, or do you anticipate much more than last year, which would, you know, put more risk into doing this?
All right. Why are you saying we're under budget?
There's an allocation. I mean, there's a surplus.
In which line item?
In the line item 514210A. Oh, I beg your pardon. 511020A.
That's street maintenance equipment, and we're saying that there's not a surplus there. I think where we're getting derailed is on this discussion with regard to the roads is we spent, or the village spent, $400,000 on the roads this year when you factor in the clubhouse, lower clubhouse. The issue is we took 200 and odd $1,000 from a bond issuance where we had residual funds left in a bond issuance, and the rest came out of Jeff's budget. So Jeff's budget looks light this year, but his total dollar spend on roads was vastly different from this number. That's where I think we're talking all cross purposes.
Alan, can I ask you a question to clarify? Basically, I think what you're saying is that the allocation of expenses that would normally go into this line went into another line. Those expenses are not appearing in this line. So even though it looks like a surplus, there was actually a lot more expenses that, because of bond issuance and escrow funds we were able to use, that normally, and we've exhausted those, so we can't use it anymore. So those expenses were allocated someplace else that's outside of these line items, basically.
Correct.
Whether you lump sum it together or not, what I'm saying is that let's ask Jeff to purchase less road cones and signs and so forth, and to take care of what he's got now, which we have quite a few, and have him have to take a hit on that. And so it doesn't matter whether you lump sum all this together or whether it was put in the wrong line or something was subtracted. The point is, and so wherever you want to take it, it's saying, Jeff, buy less stuff this year.
But I don't
Right.
think that's 4,000.
Let me put it this way. I obviously I'm not making my point well enough. I choose to disagree. I'm not willing to give back 4,000 on this because this is public safety and an employee safety issue. So I'm not willing to forsake it for $4,000, but that's just me personally.
Well, you're speculating that we don't have any leftover equipment and that we won't be able to buy new equipment and it'll be a security issue. I'm saying we have enough equipment in stock right now and it will not affect security. But let's move on. We disagree. We agree to disagree. All right.
Right.
So let's just go around the horn to see what we're going to do about this $4,000. I'll start with you, Paul.
Sure. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this $4,000 is really $4,000 that's in the roads category, one way or another. And that if it were done appropriately, $4,000 would come back into this category. And then you would be at that or maybe above that budget level on that spending. So if that's where the category is, I don't think we are. And it's a total $7,000 category?
7,700.
7,700. So the right spend on that is 7,700. Where is that $4,000 reduction in spending going to be if we do this, if we have this in the right category? In other words, if we are actually asking Jeff and Debbie to allocate the funds properly, right? Then next year, if they spent what we spend today, and assuming they did it properly this year, right? They spent it on the right stuff this year and just put it in the wrong category, we would have a $7,000 spend. So again, then what we're asking them to do is cut that $7,000 spend down to $3,000.
What I did was there is a surplus on this line item, whether you believe it was allocated properly or not. And so what I'm saying is let's lower that. What was the amount that was budgeted?
Sorry.
Everyone on this line?
So, David, it was budgeted $7,700.
Mm-hmm.
Year to date, $2,368 has been spent. And we just spent $700 or $750 on the no trespassing road sign. So let's take this up to $3,000. And then we spent $6,500 on road painting, which historically has been this classification. So this line item should have been $9,500. So we would have been over budget by $1,800. That's my point.
I understand that. So am I getting the sense that we do not want to take 4,000 out of this because ultimately we may recategorize the line items?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that you picked up on it. My preference would be we get Debbie to reallocate it. We have a budget adjustment at the next Board of Trustee meeting. So this line item is consistent and accurate, reflects what we historically always included in this line item. That way it doesn't create the confusion we have right now, would be my personal opinion.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. How about everyone else?
That makes sense. We leave the number as it is and.
No, I think, yeah, we leave the number as it's currently budgeted.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the 513020A, machinery, equipment, and the dump truck. What I'm proposing is that we do not purchase the dump truck this year. My understanding is that the 35974 is annual for 5 years. And so I'm proposing that we get by without this dump truck. And why don't we go around the horn and see what you think?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
All right. This is something we've passed the buck on for the last four years. It's a international truck. Sorry, I stand corrected. It's a Chevy Kodiak, which is no longer made. It's 20 years old. We had an issue this winter when one of the DPW employees was out doing the sand where the axle snapped. Luckily, there was no injury or anything for the employee, but the vehicle veered off the road. The big issue we have for this vehicle is Chevy no longer makes it. There's no longer parts. So the issue we're having is, you know, we can jerry rig it, but it is a rotting carcass. But the problem we have is we can't source parts. I did have Jeff put it in the budget because it is something we need. It is a big ticket item. It's what we're looking at is a stainless steel chassis and bed, so we get a greater wear on this vehicle. I think the biggest issue where we can save the money is if we extend the payment terms and go from 5 years out to 8 or 10 years, then we can get our dollar cost expend on each individual year, amortizing over the life of the vehicle. So I don't have a problem reducing the amount, but I wouldn't like to not buy the vehicle. I would like to get a little bit more innovative with regard to what kind of financing we can get and go out as long a tenor as possible to get it a lower number in each budget year. That would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. What about, Alan, have you considered a smaller dump truck?
We have, but this vehicle is basically exclusively for getting salt on the primary roads. So it's something that's been looked at and been deemed that that's not the appropriate solution. And Jeff's been pretty emphatic on that, and there's been a lot of pushback there. So I defer to him on that issue, but it has been discussed with him, yes.
Okay, so if we didn't get the truck, what would we be left with? Are you saying it's the 20-year-old truck?
Well, the problem is that the straight answer is we'd be left with a 20-year-old truck, but if something breaks and we can't find a replacement part, we will not be able to salt the roads remotely as quickly. So there is a profound effect on our residents and the safety of being out on the roads. So my view is, you know, this isn't something we can kick down the path, especially given we had the axle break this year, which kind of brought it home that it's becoming a safety hazard. So, yeah, not to sound like a broken record, my view or my stance would be, I'm happy to adjust the number down slightly, but that's a function of us still buying it, but getting a loan which allows us to pay it off over a greater time period than 5 years.
Okay, how about anyone else?
Yes,
Trustee Barnett.
I realize I keep splitting hairs and semantics, but the other option, I like the idea of extending the loan. But the other option is, this is for a full year. Why don't we buy the truck in November before the snow season starts, and therefore we're only amortizing half the $35,000 this year. So we're saving $17,000 this year, and next year we're going to be paying the full 35. But if the object is to reduce it this year, this is the way to reduce. This seems like a way to reduce it by reduce the budget by $17,000.
You're too logical. I like that idea. I mean, if I can't get the full thing, you know, I take that over nothing. What do you think, Maureen?
Yeah, I want to defer. Alan McHugh knows so much about DPW and the uses of all the equipment and vehicles. I just want to ask Alan, is the dump truck used for anything over the summer that's really important?
The good news is it's used nearly exclusively in the winter. So the strategy that Alan Barnett suggested and to be honest, the timeline, because, you know, we've had some preliminary discussions, but we've only gone out to one vendor. We have to go out to 3 vendors, and then it's a somewhat bespoke product at the end. So realistically, you know, if we make the decision, best case scenario is we get it in the fall to early winter of the upcoming, this year, 2020.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Then
it works. Let me put it this way.
Okay. Totally
I'm happy to drop it by probably 15K this year to make it 20K, and it probably makes sense in terms of payment and everything. But, you know, the one thing I'll say is on all our vehicles, it's a lump sum payment, and usually we have to pay it front end loaded. So each year it's not like everybody else's lease agreement or finance payment. It's a lump sum, so it is front end loaded. So it might not necessarily work. To be honest, I think I'm going to have to defer to Debbie. She's going, when financing, no matter when ordered, have to make first year payment in advance. So conceptually, it makes sense. Or conceptually, an idea had some merit, but it doesn't, reality doesn't work. So I think we're going back to extending the payment term is the only way we can get it down.
I think this year people are going to be willing to cut deals. I think automobile dealers are going to. Unless some law against this, I think if you got money to buy something, I think this is going to be a good year to buy on the terms you want to buy.
Alan, just on the is there any way that this truck, you know, a portion of this truck is used for water related issues? Meaning that we could take something out of the water budget?
I would love to say yes, but unfortunately the answer is no. And just to Alan Burnett's comment is we're beholden to state bid pricing on vehicles and commodity supplies. So we get, you know, the price of this vehicle comes through the state bid. And that's how our procurement with regard to things has to go with regard to this. So I'm not sure. I agree on buying an automobile. Yes, I think you're valid with regard to that. With regard to buying, you know, $175,000 truck that's being kitted out for specific use, I think it's a little bit more tricky. But we've got 2 issues to deal with. Front end payment, you have to pay first. Annual payment has to be front end loaded. Second issue is we have to conform to the state bid, and that's probably going to preclude us. So realistically, unfortunately, I think it comes back to extending the payment term.
All right, so can you do that within a couple of days? Potentially get information? Our deadline is Friday at midnight.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll table that until our meeting, which we'll obviously be having before Friday at midnight. All right, so is everyone in agreement with that? And if, Alan, when you're renegotiating the financing, if you come across anything, obviously you'll take advantage of it. Okay, so snow removal contracting, there is a surplus because we've had several mild winters in a row. And the bet here on the table is that that will continue, and therefore we could take some of that surplus and deduct it. That's the 20.
This is 51,421 OA, snow removal personal services.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't want to monopolize. Somebody else can talk if they want. I mean, I'll give you, yeah, my 2 cents and a little bit of a historical perspective as far as what I'm concerned. Is we budgeted this fiscal year $30,000. To David's point, we've only spent just under $14,000, and obviously we're done for the year. So this is going to fall into our unallocated surplus. We budgeted for the upcoming fiscal year $30K. To give you some historical perspective, in 2018-19, we budgeted $30K. We came in at $28,569. If you look over the last 6 years, our average dollar spend has been $27,000. So this wasn't a pie in the sky number. This was based on historical data. And yes, we had an easy summer this year. We're the benefit of it because it reduces our expenses in our budget, which falls into unallocated surplus, which in turn comes back into our budget and reduces our potential tax increase. That being said, the number we've got in the budget reflects pretty much close to the 6-year rolling average of what we have spent.
Thank you. That's a great statistic, but it doesn't take into account the change in cost from year to year. It just takes all of them, adds it up, and does a metric. So, I mean, I really think there's an opportunity here to actually lower this, assuming. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, this number is our labor. This isn't salt and sand. This is our labor number we're talking about.
I understand.
Okay, but that's a function of our collective bargaining agreement and our overtime and everything with regard to that. So it is, I mean, it's every 3 years and we're coming up on a new labor negotiation, but I mean, it's dictated by that.
Right, and I believe you allocated already 2% increase as an estimate for the contract, which is in this budget.
Within the budget is an assumption by Jeff on what he believed would be what our contract settlement was, correct?
Right, and the same with the PBA contract, right? So that 2% is already in there. So, I mean, it's done and dusted. So it brings us back to this conversation. Look, here it is. If we're climate deniers, we're not going to take the risk. If we believe in climate change, it's going to be an easy winner, and this is a great place to cut.
I believe.
Actually, I think, Mayor, I think climate, if you believe in climate change, you'll be believing in more severe storms, not less. But let's not debate climate change.
So how do you explain the last 2 years that were very light?
Was the previous year all that light?
I don't have it.
The previous year was $2,000 under our budget forecast. This year was the only year that has been light. In the last, and then in calendar year 2015-16, it was a $14,000 number. Just as a contextual thing, in 2014-15, we spent $47,000 on plowing the roads. So the number has a lot of variability.
And that was overtime. A lot of that was overtime, right?
Correct.
Okay, so where's everyone stand on this? I'm for lowering it, and I'd like to know where you guys stand. I'd like to, lower it, the snow removal by 10. How about everyone else?
So I'll start again. If I saw a basis for thinking that we could, I mean, we budget this on the basis of what our expectations are based on past experience. And our past experience, some years they're higher, some years they're lower, but our past experience tells us that this is about where we come out on average. If there were a basis for thinking that Jeff could do this in the winter and lower his labor costs so that they're lower, based on our expectations, I mean, I would be all for that, but I don't think we have that. If we wanted to lower it to something closer to what our average is, the 27.5 rather than the 30, that would make sense to me. But lowering it lower than that is just saying, without a basis for it whatsoever, our expectation for this coming year is that we'll spend less. And I don't think that expectation is there.
Okay, sushi lunch, but let's move on. Okay, so Maureen or Alan, let's move on. Let's get this going. Paul's proposing a $2,500 reduction.
I would agree. That makes sense to me.
I'd go 5,000.
How about 5? I go for 5. No one else does. So unfortunately, oops, $2,500 off that. All right, let's move on to the next. Now we're at the treating the bodies of water. One choice would be to suspend Pond 3, Eurasian water milfoil, and then do the coontail as well. That's $25,000 savings. Another choice would be, and by the way, other choices are available if someone has one. For example, I know Jim's on the line. He may want to comment on it later. The choice 2 is suspending the WEWA, Eurasian milfoil, water milfoil, and coontail eradication, and continuing to do it in Pond 3. So that would be a $14,000 savings. I would say that this is a topic for Paul and Alan since they're on the Lake Committee.
Well,
Just to be clear, I'm not on the Lake Committee, nor is Paul. Paul is the trustee liaison to the Lake Committee. So
Liaisons.
we are intimately involved on lakes management. Paul and I do have a meeting of the minds with regard to this, and I think Paul put together a spreadsheet, and it's best for him to talk to this point.
So just a clarification on our current budget, proposed budget for the WEWA, there is not any funding in there for removal of coontail. The budget as it currently is constituted for the WEWA reflects 5 days of work recommended by our lakes manager. Based on subsequent discussions, the lakes manager recommended for the WEWA in particular some additional days if funding were available. Some of that could be used for coontail, but that, if it were going to be done, would actually require funding additional to what's currently in the budget for the WEWA. The case for dealing or expending funding on water milfoil eradication in the WEWA is that if you do it now, when milfoil is relatively sparse and has been beaten back by having the water much lower over the past few years and having to go through a couple of winters while the dam is being built, you can get at it and keep it down with a relatively minor expense. If you let this go and don't spend the money this year, you'll have a much more extensive problem next year, in the opinion of our consultant, and much worse in future years. We're now at a point on Tuxedo Lake where we are more or less foreclosed from using DASH as a solution on that lake. It's gotten so bad. That's not a situation that we would want to happen in the WEWA.
There's no comparison between the two, although I appreciate your effort. The Tuxedo Lake is almost the entire perimeter of the lake is covered with milfoil. We've just let that go year after year after year. So to say that we cannot let 1 year go on the WEWA just doesn't make sense. You know, we can make the decision not to do the Eurasian milfoil on the WEWA. We can either make the decision or not. It's that simple.
Of course we can make that decision. The point being, my perspective being, and I think the lakes consultant being, is that you will spend much more in later years. Now, we can go back and ask them, what do you think will happen with a 1 year delay? We haven't been able to monetize that, but we can see when it starts to go, it goes pretty quickly, and it got pretty, the growth rate from in this past year from virtually nothing to where it is now, is fairly significant. So yes, we all can make the choice not to put the funding into that, but it's, dollars deferred today resulting in a much larger expenditure, down the road.
I would say that I would agree with you if you're talking about diving, but aren't you talking about chemical in Pond 3? And then potentially, you could alleviate, it's much cheaper to, instead of doing diving, to do the chemical in the Weewa as well. This is not our reservoir. We did chemicals in Pond 3 last year, and I believe you're proposing chemicals again in Pond 3 this year. Is that correct?
Right, I was speaking about the Weewa.
No, I know. But
Right,
I'm saying
So-
it's
so
also
that-
possible
spending-
next year, if
spending
we delay it
chemical-
1 year, we could
Spending
also
chemicals
potentially
in the Weewa would be
consider.
probably much more expensive because you'd have to treat a much wider area as opposed to $10,000 or so for Dash.
Dash has to be done every year. It's a waste of money. We've seen that in Tuxedo Lake. All right, let's move on. So no one wants,
Wait
So
a minute here.
One of the
I-
reasons, one of the reasons we have a lakes consultant is so that we can retain him for his expertise, and so that we remove ourselves somewhat from the, from all our various opinions on, what works and what doesn't work and what should work and what doesn't work. And the reason, in my mind, why we sort of hired these guys for their recommendations is so that we can, we don't have to abide by them, obviously, but I think we give them a little bit more of a grounding, if you will, because they are, they have the expertise.
I completely agree. Now, didn't they recommend chemical in the Tuxedo Lake?
Yes, they did.
Okay. So, look, it sounds like you want the total flexibility. Do you have something in mind, Paul, that would be more expensive that we would have to add to the budget? Or have you figured out a plan that will equal what you put in for the number
I'm not following the
in the
question.
last budget? What do you have for the Lakes budget in April 8th?
For the fourth,
Sorry, which year? 19,
The
20,
current
or
year,
2021?
this current fiscal year.
This
what
current
have you
fiscal
allocated?
year is $40,000 from the general. Next
Okay.
year, there's a $50,000 budget line item.
Okay, and so you believe that you need the full 40 this year?
This
Paul?
year,
yes.
the full 40 will be used. We're up at around, once we've got the Lakes Manager's report, we'll be up around 38,000. Then we have to do the permitting with the DEC, which is another couple grand. So we'll be pretty much at or on budget.
Yeah, I signed those documents 2 days ago for the permits. Okay, so you want all 40. I'd like to take 14 out, but I stand alone. And I would do that by not doing anything in the Weewa this year. All right, so how does everyone feel?
Yeah, let's canvass, see what.
Yeah, everyone, let's do Paul wants the 40, Alan wants the 40. Where do Maureen and Alan stand?
I'm going to go the 42. I think of all the items on this list, that's the one I would not cut, because I think we spent a lot of money, a lot of attention on the Big Weewa, and Pond 3. I think we let the big lake go because it's so bad it's not gonna get any worse. But I think if we don't go ahead and do this recommended treatment, we just kind of throwing away the money that we spent already on the Pond 3 and the Big Weewa.
All right, thank you. So let's move on.
Sorry,
Please.
David, we didn't get Maureen's opinion, and I didn't.
Well,
get
there's already three people.
Right, but I actually think the lakes and taking how we manage the lakes and everything is something very true and dear to a lot of residents' hearts, and they would probably appreciate hearing what the trustees' individual views are.
Okay, so the one left is Maureen.
But I defer to you.
Maureen?
So on the Weewa, I would absolutely spend the money to correct the Weewa. We're so close. if we let it go of what the experts are saying, it's going to cost us more in the future and just create a bad situation. So I would absolutely, the way you've laid out choice 1 and 2, in choice 2, it would be eliminating suspending pond 3 treatment. However, Paul, I have a quick question for you, which is that if you suspend treatment in pond 3 of the EWM could fragment and flow down into Weewa. Is that correct?
Could, yes.
And does the lake consultants consider that a risk?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm with the not deducting the 25,000, which is what that's in this proposal that we talked about on April 8th as well. So at this point, I would love to take something out of the lake's budget, but it's be a penny wise and a pound foolish. It sounds to me.
Okay, just for clarification, choice 2 does not suspend anything in pond 3. It suspends the Weewa. Choice 1 suspends everything.
Right. I would have
Okay.
changed. My original thing would have been to say choice 2 is suspend pond 3. But as Paul just pointed out, or in answer to my question, there is risk that you will actually spread. If you don't treat pond 3, there's risk you spread from pond 3 to Weewa, which would, not be could be detrimental to the Weewa.
Okay, so I think the next item, 714040A, is a rounding error. No one's opposed to canceling that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that brings us to the end. Debbie, have you been able to keep track of the deductions and what our new total would be? Can we turn on Debbie's mic?
Debbie should be able to unmute herself. There you go.
The total deductions come to 23,700.
Thank you. That's well short of last year's tax rate, unfortunately. I had really hoped for more. So Alan and the rest of the trustees, I do believe we need to have another meeting before we finalize the budget, because you have issues regarding the payout for the dump truck financing. And let's see, we wanted to, I think there was one other.
Well, to be honest, it's something that we would need to go into executive session, and that was salary expense with regard to police. But that was the other topical thing on this list.
But there is another list, right? And that's the list that talks about revenue opportunities.
Oh yes, in my proposal, I've eliminated that because I don't want to raise anything. I was hoping to do it all with reductions. And personally, I wouldn't support any increases in those fees. To me, it's just another tax. And I think the total that you had proposed was 15 grand of revenue increase per year.
Yep.
And I don't know how much of a dent that would make. We are so far from where we wanted to be.
Well, I think it matters, and we were talking about items that were $1,000 and $4,000. So I think that we should be able to make the case why some of these revenue items should be considered.
Okay, so why don't you run through those now, and we'll all comment.
Okay. Increased storage unit fees. Currently, we charge $150 per month, and we have 8 units. We have again, Alan McHugh is the expert on this, but we have, as I understand it, a waiting list. We had talked about as a group, and I understand the reservation, we talked about as a group increasing that amount to $200 a month. That would be a $4,800 increase in revenues. Alan?
Why don't we just raise the fee across the board by 10%? I mean, we're picking this fee versus that fee. We're going to gouge this person versus that person. I mean, there are no good choices. I mean, they're all bad.
No. I completely disagree with that. First and foremost is we're not gouging anybody. Second thing is we're trying to make sure things reflect market rates. third point is, and I think to John Cassis's point, which was entirely valid, which is a subset of the population does not live in the park but uses our infrastructure. And why aren't we charging a fee for them to use that infrastructure? So there's entirely valid points.
But John's point was about lighting on the road, lighting on the streets, and the two areas we're talking about of the club and the school. The two areas, the roads we're talking about is Clubhouse Road and the village office. And how often does somebody from the club go down Clubhouse Road? I mean, how they don't do that. So
yeah, but that I don't accept that argument. I mean, we have, let's make it easy. We have 25 miles of road and we have a maintenance schedule of 10 years. So Clubhouse Road came up that it's 10 years in neglect. That's why it's being done. But Tuxedo Road, Jeff wants to do Camp Comfort Road from the Tavani's property all the way up. That there's a perfect case in point where
I think there's some simple approach. I mean, we have difficult choices, and I shouldn't have used the word gouge, but we have difficult. So I would say let's just stop trying to decide we do raise this one, not that one. But I'm going to lose this one, so I'm going to be quiet.
Just one point, Alan. The road usage fee that you're talking about is not currently listed on the revenues that Maureen is presenting now. That would be an addition, correct?
No.
I'm not sure what Maureen's referring to, so I'll defer to her.
This was the revenues that we increased together last time, Maureen.
Right.
And I don't believe that there was a usage fee for club members or school parents.
Other than non-resident tags. But
non-resident vehicle tags, line item 1520A is what had been discussed.
Right.
Let me rephrase it, had conceptually been put out there.
Mm-hmm. I think you'd have to raise that license tag fee pretty high to make a dent on road repair. But
so let's go through each of the items very quickly, okay, that we talked about just to close it out, okay? So I ask for everyone's patience and deference on this point. And I'm going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible, get everyone's comments as quickly as possible, and we can talk about decisions for Debbie to implement in the budget. Increased storage unit fees. As Alan McHugh said, we're addressing sort of the market price. We have a waiting list for people that want to use the fees, use the facilities. So therefore, we talked about increasing the fees to $200 per month versus $150. It's a little less than 20% increase. It's a lot less than 20. It's a little less than 15% increase. Excuse me. And so that would generate $4,800 of revenue. Paul, thoughts? Any thoughts on this? Okay, Alan McHugh. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm actually in favor of it.
Okay, Alan Barnett.
Fine.
Sorry.
Negatory. Negatory.
Yeah.
I do not want it. Yeah.
Okay, no, I think that's fair. And so, Paul Gluck, did you come back?
Yeah, I mean, if that's something more close to a market rate, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Hard to define exact market rate, but there is a waiting list, so that it tells you that the 150 may be lower. There may be room on that. Okay, so I think I'm supportive of it. So I think we have 4 people in favor. So Debbie, and the increasing of the storage unit fees should be included. Village Boat Club fees, we had talked about effective January 2021, a $1,000 increase, a $1,000 charge. I think that we've had discussions at previous budget meetings, or I think we received some information from the president of the Village Boat Club, and I don't know if anybody wants to comment on it. on that charge of $1,000.
Yeah,
Uh,
sorry. Oh, sorry, David.
I'm opposed.
Totally get, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually opposed on this. I think Greg Liddy wrote a very good memo with regard to this, that it is for residents of the park exclusively, and they're already taxpayers. So I personally think we take this off the table.
Yes, okay, go on. Paul Gluck.
Sure. I just to add to that, and a shout out, I guess, in a sense, to the Village Boat Club as well. Not generally known, but they have been extremely helpful in supporting the village and in engaging in assistance and things that have to get done on Tuxedo Lake. You know, the village does not have a boat. The village does not have access to a boat on Tuxedo Lake other than in emergencies through the fire department. When things need to get done or activity needs to get taken on the lake, they have been very forthcoming in providing that assistance, probably at a dollar value greater than than the proposed fee here. So,
Alan
So-
Barnett.
Hold on, Paul, you should disclose that you're the secretary of the club.
I would if that were true, but it's not. So
Oh, really? Do you have any role?
I am trustee liaison and a member.
Okay, okay, very good.
So Alan Barnett, any additional comments?
I think it's gonna go no raise. I think $1,000 raise with fee would be reasonable. And if we're cutting infrastructure, we're making hard choices. This is a hard choice.
So, okay, thank you. I'm opposed to it as well, so I think the noes carry that one. Increase in certificate of occupancy fees. We charge $100 per CO that's issued, and there's about 200 COs requested annually.
No, 20 to 30, not 200.
I'm sorry, 20 to 30. Sorry, I apologize. I put in number 20. I'm sorry, not 200. So wouldn't that be nice? 20 COs issued annually. That would so we were proposing increasing it or discussing increasing the CO charge from $100 to $300. And with the 20 estimated COs issued annually, that would bring it up to $4,000 increase in revenues. And I'll just lay it out that I'm supportive of this. I think the time and energy that it takes to create a CO is within the range of $300. I think there's price elasticity in this item as well. So let's start Alan Barnett.
Again, I think we should raise fees when we raise fees.
Okay. Alan McHugh.
Yeah, I mean, I am very supportive of this. I think it's been in excess of 10 years since anybody's had a look at this. And I think it's, there's quite a bit of labor intensity with regard to going to the property, checking everything. So I think this is just adjusting to market rates. So I think it's entirely fair. So I'm supportive.
Paul Gluck.
Yes.
And Mayor, you're opposed, so I don't need to.
No, I support it.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so that would increase it by, Debbie, increase it, I think, by 4,000.
4,000.
Yep. Okay, we want beach club fees. We had talked about effective January 2021, increasing or creating a fee of $1,000 for the Weewha Beach Club. Paul, do you want to start?
I believe they pay a fee currently, do they not?
Sorry,
No.
500.
Last fiscal year, they paid nothing. The year before, they paid $1. So it's a notional sum.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, Paul?
I stand corrected on that. It's a bit of a slippery slope to go down, but I would say yes.
Okay.
Pardon me? Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give John Cassis too much credit, but I agree. It's non-resident usage of our asset. So I am actually in favor of that for that reason.
Alan Barnett,
I agree.
Mayor.
I'm going to withhold judgment on that because I think there's a variety of issues that we need to deal with the Weewa Beach Club. And in fact, Paul and I are meeting with the president probably this week. So at this point in time, I'm opposed to it.
Okay.
We'll see what happens after I meet with them.
Yeah, just to be clear, what we're suggesting is not for this season. It's for the 2021 season. So it would not be effective this calendar year, but it would be effective this fiscal year.
Noted.
So I certainly don't want to give John Cassis any credit, as you don't, Alan. But yeah, I would be supportive of this charging this fee. So that means Debbie, $1,000 new line item in the revenues for Weewa Beach Club fees. Okay. Weewa Fishing Club fees. Currently, Weewa Fishing Club pays $400 to the Village of Tuxedo Park and stocks the lake with fish. Would be effective again for we would get the income in this fiscal year, but it would be effective for the summer, basically, or for the year beginning January 2021. We're proposing a $1,000 fee. So the fee that they would pay would go from $400 to $1,000. Alan Barnett, sorry, or Alan McHugh, whomever wants to start.
I be consistent. I support that. I mean, I don't like any of them, but I support that one.
Alan McHugh.
Yeah. I'm in favor for the same argument. It's using our roads. It's actually using our DPW facilities as a storage unit for boats and everything. So I think it's entirely fair.
Paul Gluck.
I'm embarrassed to admit that when we were talking about the Weewa Beach Club, I thought we were talking about the Weewa Fishing Club. So since I had said yes previously, I will say yes currently as well.
Okay. All right. So Debbie, a new.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. Did I not give you a chance? I apologize.
I'm opposed.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So Debbie, new line item in the increase, excuse me, not new line item, revenues increase in the fees from 400 to 1,000, the revenue line from 400 to 1,000. Okay, next item is non-resident tags. We had budgeted about 19,200 in the proposed budget April 8th for income from issuing non-resident tags. Our current charge is $85.
I believe, I have to confirm that. Hang on.
Okay. We're talking about increasing it to $95. I thought it was a $10 increase that we were referring to. And so that was going to be roughly a 10% increase, a little over 10% increase. So that would increase our revenue by $2,100.
Can I ask a question? Is this the instrument we want to use for the usury issues regarding our roads from the club and school? Is the money you're increasing this tag to go towards that? And if so, how would that be budgeted? Would we put it into a specific category, that increase, to sort of keep it in an escrow, if you will?
No, I think that, okay, number one, I don't support the user concept of the club and the school being, the club is a very large taxpayer. So I think that that argument may have some issues with it, and I totally understand what people are saying about usage of the roads, but that's not the position I would take. I would take the position as overall our tag fees are $85. We haven't changed them in a couple years. There are a variety of reasons why we should be increasing the fees on the non-resident tags, but it's not to target necessarily just the club or just the TPS. So I wouldn't have a separate line item. To answer your question directly, I wouldn't have a separate line item go into revenue. But I'm opposed to this increase, but because I think that what is shown in the past, and I think Alan McHugh, you might have mentioned this at some meeting, that what is shown in the past, when you increase the non-resident tag fees, you end up having less people get the tags, so your revenue actually doesn't achieve what you expect it to achieve, A, and B, you get clogging at the front gate of people coming in, and having to speak with the police officer at the front gate. So that's my opinion. Alan McHugh.
Correct. So just some context is we haven't changed the tag fee for in excess of 3 years. It's currently $75. And if you need a plate, it's an additional $15. That's a one-off charge. So it is 3+ years old. So we've held it firm for the last 3 years. So I don't think it's an unreasonable charge. I accept your argument with regard to the club, and in the past there has been some discussions with the club doing a flat fee structure where they'll buy X amount of tags and there'll be a guaranteed revenue stream, and that gets around the whole issue of it gives us gives the village a guaranteed revenue stream, and it might give the club a preferential rate. So there's potential for finessing that one and looking at that one, and I'd certainly be amenable to that, but I don't think increasing the fee from $75 to $80 or $85 is unreasonable. So I'm in favor.
All right, we were talking about from $75 to $95.
I'm gonna make an exception here. Again, we're talking symbolism. I don't think anybody raising it $5 or $10 is not a significant amount of money to either the village or the non-residents. But the majority of non-residents who use it, I believe, are members of the club or going to the school. I think both the school and the club add significantly to the life of Tuxedo Park. The club is what people point out, is a major taxpayer, but it's also a major social cohesion, and the school has over the years added a lot to the life of the park. I think both of them may well be under problems with the climate we're in, as the cost of COVID-19 reverberate in the months to come. And I don't want to do anything, even a small thing, that makes their life harder. So I'm against raising those two fees.
The mayor?
I agree with Alan. And to me, it's just nickel and diming. And it's not going to get us the kind of money or revenue that's significant. So I'm against it.
So am I. Did I ask Paul Gluck your opinion? I'm sorry.
No, you didn't, but this one, and it's hard to articulate, this one does not seem very appealing to me. I think it doesn't bring much. The fees are high as they are. Kind of burdensome for, the sort of a tax on avoiding having to wait as long, at the front gate.
Yep.
I would leave these where they are.
Right. Okay. I think we have 4 out of 5. So, okay, we're going to leave that alone. And then the last item that we had listed, and maybe there's others that we didn't consider, but the last item we had listed was boat and dock fee increases. We were budgeting $16,200. Right now we charge $250 for pontoons, $200 for dock fees. All others are $100. I don't know the last time that Alan McHugh, I'm sure, knows the last time that number was increased, but we had talked about a 10% increase. There may not be price, anyway. So Alan McHugh, can you give us color on when those fees were last increased?
Yep, 2016.
Okay.
And
so
I believe Just so we're context, not 10%, it was $50 per. So went from 200 to 250 on the pontoons, 150 to 200 on Duffy's, and 50 to 100 on all others.
Okay, so it's basically 5 years. So that's a 2% average increase per year. Paul Gluck?
All right, so full disclosure, I buy a boat sticker every year for a kayak. So I think these fees, the boat tags we're really talking about are tags for boats that are on Tuxedo Lake, because people typically don't buy many tags for the Weewa or for Pond 3. And those boat tags are tags for either homeowners on Tuxedo Lake who pay a fair amount in property taxes, or they're for the Village Boat Club for multi-person use boats, and those fees get passed on to taxpayers here who use those boats, or for some 8 or 10 privately owned boats that are at the Village Boat Club who buy those stickers, or for boats at the Tuxedo Club, who both privately owned and boats for multiple uses. I think most of those people pay a lot already. This isn't a case of the funding for that actually going back into the lake. It goes into the general fund. I think there's a lot more, there's a lot more room for creating revenue here if we actually started to do some things to enforce the use of boat stickers currently, because if you've been on a lake over the last couple of years, you see lots of boats without stickers. You see lots of boats near shore that don't have stickers. So I would much prefer to see us increase our efforts at getting people to actually buy the stickers at their current rates, and encourage perhaps more disregard of the requirement to buy stickers by increasing the rates.
Okay, great. Al McHugh?
I'm in favor of a lot larger increase. I accept Paul's point, and I don't have a problem that Tuxedo Lake owners have one set, non-lake owners have a different fee structure, and we do it that way. I don't remotely have a problem with that, and I'm sympathetic to that argument. But we have a colossal problem with regard to our lakes and lake management, and the village has gone from spending 6 years ago $15,000 to $150,000, and the money has to come from somewhere, and people need to get focused that this is a colossal problem, and it's going to cost all of us money, and we need to focus their attention. And not many things have not gone up in 5 years, so I'm actually in favor of increasing the rates, but I'm sympathetic to your argument, Paul. But I think, one, we need far better enforcement, and two is I don't have a problem having a bifurcated structure with regard to lakefront owners versus non-lakefront owners. I would be sympathetic to that argument.
Okay, Alan Barnett?
Full disclosure, Joanne has a skull, so I may be sleeping in the couch tonight, but I'm in favor of increasing the fees as well as enforcement. I think it's symbolic. We need to get revenue. We need to address infrastructure issues. We need to get some more revenue here, and this is the way to do it, I believe.
The mayor?
Okay, Alan McHugh made a point earlier when we were talking about raising the fee on the Village Boat Club, and he said that they already pay taxes. And I would like to apply that same logic to the increase in boating fees. I think the people on the lakes pay significant taxes. And again, this is a nickel and dime thing. Let me explain why. Alan, you made the point about the lakes and the budgets and the increases. But you'd have to raise these fees so high to even make a dent in what we're supposedly going to be spending on the lakes over the next few years. So I would say definitely no. I absolutely agree with the enforcement issue. And so I'm a no.
Okay, and I'm a no as well. So I think that that makes 3 no's, correct? Paul Gluck, you were a no?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's 3 no's. So, and it's only, we're talking about $1,600 at this point.
No, sorry. You were talking about $1,600. I was talking about a totally different order of magnitude. I personally think they should be doubled, not a 10% increase.
Okay.
But I was saying doubled except for property owners along the lake body. That was my delineation.
Okay, I'm still a no. I don't know, Paul, if you changed your view. Mayor.
No, there's no difference.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to go ahead with boat and dock fees at this point. Okay, that's all the items that we had on the list of ideas to increase, possible ideas to increase revenues.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Trustees want to say anything?
I think we're good. Thank you, Maureen. So we're at the end of our proposed cuts, and we've just added some revenues. I'd like to open up the floor for comments without objection from the trustees. And so, John, you're on deck. We're going to try and get in as many people as we can. So if you're interested in making a comment, let us know. If you're on camera, you can give us a wave. And what was our other backup plan last Tuesday, John?
You can click on the participants feature on the bottom and then electronically raise your hand, like it looks like Claudio Guazzoni.
Claudio?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the mayor for putting in so much time. A lot of great ideas in budget cutting. You know, those fortunate of us that can pay these high taxes don't need to worry, but maybe we need to worry for the less fortunate who are being priced out of Tuxedo Park. That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, it seems to me that there's a mismatch in a lot of what was being said tonight. Sort of things being paid up front and having a life of 5, 6, 7, 10 years. When you pay, you know, this is supposed to be an operational budget. Everything's meant to be having a life of a year, year and a half. When we start thinking about fixing the roof on the building at the South Gate, it has a life of 20 years. And if we pay for it with our taxpayer base currently, it's taking money out of the current taxpayers and putting it into the pockets of the people who will move in 5 and 10 years from now. And the same thing, if we over budget for the roads and we say, hey, you know, it's not a big deal, we'll just over budget and recapture it in the surplus. Well, what happens then? We're taking money out of people who are paying their taxes now, moving out after maybe, you know, there are 20, 30 people that move out every year. So there's a transfer of wealth from those people into the new residents of the park. So we have to be very careful and not have mismatches in life expectancy of our capital expenditures and when we pay for them. You know, things that have a 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years life to them should be paid out of a bond issuance, and they should be paid over 7, 10, or 15 years. That's what we did for the dam. So we have to be very careful when we do that. Secondly, when I was a trustee, I did a lot of extensive work on the roads and with the engineers, really studied them carefully. I remember the engineers saying that 80% of the damage done to the roads is done when the roads thaw. So when what's underneath the road melts, it's not frozen anymore. Certain pieces melt faster than others, And when we have vehicles going over there, that's when the damage occurs. Over the past 3-4 years, there's a lot of building being done. I remember hundreds of big trucks packed with, these big Mack dump trucks, doing a lot of damage to our roads. We haven't had that this year. We haven't had any of these big trucks that really damage our roads this year. So maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe we can keep it, below whatever budget we have. One last thing I want to say is the boat sticker. Does that pay for the steam cleaning of the boats, or do the taxpayer pay for the steam cleaning of the boats? And exactly how much does that steam cleaning cost?
Well, I think that it's done by the DPW, but it's not done on an overtime basis, so it falls within their current scope of work. But if I'm wrong, any of the trustees can chime in. Okay. Anything else, Claudio?
No, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. John, who do we have?
I'm not sure. I think Walter Dean had his hand raised.
All right, Mr. Dean, how are you? Turn on your microphone, sir.
Thank you
You're
all
muted.
very much.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Thank you, and thanks to the village staff and the police, et cetera, for all that you're doing in this difficult time. I'm probably just repeating, but I just thought I would give some numbers. I feel like we have to cut some more because all of the houses that are selling for so much less. Whitney, 3.3 million asking 995. 3 Acoma, 4.9 million asking 1.05 million. Ginchard, 6.9 million asking 3.35 million. Curry, these are original numbers, by the way. Curry, 6.250 million, sold 1.86 million. Blue Sable, 5.5 million, sold 1.6 million. And I just think that we need to realize that this is a trend in Tuxedo Park, and we need to make further cuts because, with this pandemic and with all of the houses selling for less and people's jobs at stake, et cetera, I just don't think we have the luxury for even the budget that you're talking about and even the cuts that I know you're working very hard to make, but I feel like they're not enough. And as I said the last time, I think that we need to set an example for the school and we need to set an example for the town. And then finally, I think maybe we should do something to make it a little bit easier for people to come in and develop the 13 or 19 building lots. So to encourage building and maybe reduce the ARB influence or reduce something so that people can feel confident they can come into Tuxedo Park and build, and that will also help our tax revenue. And thank you.
Thank you. John?
Next is, I believe, Susan. There you go.
Good fellow.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you? Well,
Good,
actually,
long
you're
time
doing
no
a great
see.
job. Yeah. Oh my goodness, you guys are working so hard. It's really commendable, the effort and the attention to detail. There are a couple of things in relation to lakes management that I wanted to address. One is that, first of all, under New York Public Health law, lakes are viewed as reservoirs. Happen to be used Tuxedo Lake for our drinking water at this point in time. Back in the day, in point of fact, pond number 3 was where the first water was drawn out. So it's just important to understand it's a reservoir system. Number 2, Procelicor is a new new chemical, and it simply isn't known what the long-term impacts of using that chemical might be. And in the past, in taking a look at other chemicals, I think Denny Miller really spelled out the dangers for the village in making a decision to use those chemicals. And in understanding that, when you get a permit to use the chemicals, the state is not taking responsibility for the long-term impacts of what that chemical may be. It's just giving you the right, you as trustees, to make that decision. The responsibility for that decision will rest with you. Okay, there's that. Now, in terms of the lakes, we've known for a long time that you guys are really at just the beginning of the expenditures. The EWM is the latest invasive, but there are a lot more waiting in the wings and that are around us. It's just a matter of time. So understanding what the threats are going to be is important, and finally getting a plan together to deal with it is extremely important. Now, in listening to the discussion about treating the Big Lake, or any of the lakes for that matter, in the Big Lake, there's a lot of discussion about treating the Big Lake because the Eurasian water milfoil is creating a problem with recreational usage. Okay, now our water fund is designed to charge its users for drinking water, not for providing residents of any sort with a recreational use. So if any lake management that you ultimately decide to choose, hopefully in concert with working very hard with the Lakes Committee, has to be, if you're going to use the water fund, linked to the lake's ecology and its impact on the quality of drinking water. Otherwise, you'll have to find another way of funding it. I suspect it's I expect it's illegal to be charging people for drinking water and using it for recreation. Furthermore, because the folks who buy water from the village are not all village residents, if they're in a position of paying for recreation on Tuxedo Lake, it may create some problems for our gates. It may put them in a position of saying, hey, if I'm paying for lake usage, boating and so on, then let us in the gates. Let us use the lake for recreation. So that's the point I have about that. Now, and the same point holds true for the treatment of the other two lakes. Now, it has long been held by the village for, I mean, as long as I've lived here and served on the board in the 90s, blah, 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 that residents who own property around Pond Number 3 and the Weewa have the right to use those lakes for swimming or boating at their own risk. At their own risk. The Weewa Beach Club assumes the risk. It's got to have insurance. It has to demonstrate that it's properly covered. That it is not a village. It's not a village recreational use that the village covers. It's a separate thing. So the issue you've really got to take a look at is the way you think about and look about this. Certainly, I well understand the whole issue of the aesthetics and people wanting recreational use, but if you're not taking these actions to improve water quality and the ecology of the lakes, you could be backing into some really kind of dangerous legal stuff in terms of taking on the responsibility for providing safe swimming. And that you really might want to take a look at with your lawyer. What does your language mean, and what are you taking on in the way of additional liability and responsibility? And furthermore, what then, for those of us who don't own property around Pond Number 3, what would prevent us from saying, hey, what do I look like? I'm paying for their recreation. Let me have access to swim in pond number 3, as long as we're doing recreation and the village is taking responsibility for safe swimming.
All right, so Susan, if
Those
I
are the
may,
comments I have.
if I
Yeah,
may,
sure.
all your points are well taken. Do you mind if I move on because we're limited on time?
No, I don't. That was all I wanted to.
Do you
I
want
wanted
to,
say because of
do
the
you want to reach
concerns
out
I
to
have
me,
about
or
that.
do you want to reach out to me or any of the other trustees after the meeting or some tomorrow, and we can continue that discussion?
No, I think I've made my point. Unless you have a question, if you got a question, you got my email. Happy to talk. I just
Appreciate it.
welcome the opportunity to make these points about the budget and
Our
proper use
pleasure.
of the budget. Okay,
Our pleasure.
thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay, John, do we have anyone else?
I don't see anybody else.
Last call. Okay, let's just go in case someone, oh, I see Ron Reed, you have your hand up? Oh, that was a glass of red wine. Sorry. Okay, is there anyone else? All right, folks, we have to set another meeting, another budget workshop, and why don't we discuss that right now? What works for everybody? Trustee Wise.
I can't do this Thursday evening, but otherwise I'm free.
Okay, how about you, Paul?
I can't do Thursday before about 1 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
That's fine.
and let's see, McHugh, Trustee McHugh.
I can do Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, anytime Friday. Except for Friday
You mean
evening.
Thursday?
You mean Wednesday? Yeah.
Well, I can do anytime tomorrow,
Right.
anytime Thursday,
Uh-huh.
or I would say Friday evening is a non-starter, but anytime during the day and Friday. But
I'm just a little, okay, I just don't know if tomorrow you'd have enough time to work on that financing issue, but maybe you can just do a guesstimate after a brief conversation with them, and we can use it as a plug number.
Yeah, I mean, I think conceptually, we just need to know what is doable and what the dollar amount would be. That's
Mhm.
all I'm going
Mhm.
after. I think I can have that by tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, Trustee Barnett,
I can do Thursday.
you can do Thursday?
Yeah,
I can do tomorrow. Can anyone else do tomorrow besides,
do we have
Yeah.
a notice requirement for tomorrow?
pardon me?
Do we have a notice requirement for tomorrow?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yes, we do. So we cannot do it tomorrow. So Thursday we can't. Ooh, how about Thursday morning?
Yeah, I'm free all day Thursday. Paul said he's not available till 1 on Thursday, and I
Okay.
6, so there's a window between 1 and 5.
What
that
if
works.
we do it at, Paul, is 1 o'clock cutting it too close? Would you rather do 1:30?
Yeah, 1:30 or 2, I would say, if we.
Okay, 2 o'clock sounds good. How about for everyone else?
Works for me.
All right, what's that date?
Yeah.
It's
29th.
30th. April 30th
Thursday
at 2
at
o'clock.
2,
Thursday.
right?
All right,
Yeah,
Thursday.
4:30, 2 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let the record show that April 30th at 2 o'clock p.m., we will continue our budget workshop. And I'd like to give a big shout out to everybody in the meeting today. And let's see what we can do. Hopefully we can get some more cuts, but without objection, the meeting's adjourned.
Well, Mac, did you want to go into executive session? I thought we needed to talk about something in executive session.
No, I don't think we need to go into executive session. I mean, we're talking about one item. And I think, honestly, with 2 trustees talking about that and then sharing the information, we can come to a conclusion without going into an executive session. But if you folks would rather do an executive session, I'll do it. I see Alan Barnett shaking his head. I agree with you, Alan. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
David, I would take the argument that we've got another budget workshop on the 30th, and if we need to, and the $5,000 is that critical, we can go into executive session there and take care of it there.
All right.
Okay. All right. Again, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.